Babcock at his home on March the 3rd. At his home. Bob, what were your parents' names?
George Babcock, George T. Babcock, and Eva Green Babcock.
Where were they born?
Mother was born in Seymour, Iowa, would have been 86. Dad was born in Trinidad in 85. Her parents had down to Iowa, Indiana, as far as I know. That was, at least, was her maternal parents. Dad's father came to Colorado at the time of the Greeley Party settlement as a young boy who was dying of consumption and in these salubrious climes managed to live to be 80-some years old. His is a rather interesting story. He went to, as he was old enough, went to Trinidad. Coal boomed there and started the first creamery in Trinidad. And when it was functioning pretty well, sent back to his old home in Ohio for my grandmother, be set out. I don't know whether he'd known her before. I rather doubt it, but it was one of those things that happened in those days. That's just the way it's done. Yes. The Greens came to Colorado in 87, either the winter of 86 or spring of 87, and settled at the end of the railroad, Grenada. They homesteaded out at Two Buttes and left there when they learned that by court would be his town, lots were being sold. Came into Rocky Ford that fall of 1887.
Where were you born?
I was born in La Junta at the Ragsdale Hospital. Mother and Dad were married in 1908 and went to Utah to break into the new moving picture theater business. Ran into the misfortune of one of the worst winters they had ever had there in that part of Utah, and which ended their involvement in moving pictures, perhaps unfortunately, because it became quite a thing, of course. And Dad came back and got a job at the Colorado State Bank Savings and Trust in La Junta as a teller. He had been a teller in the old State Bank here in Rocky Ford at the time, and so had that background experience. And I was born there in 1990.
When were you married?
Martha and I were married in 50 years ago, last Saturday, on February 28th in Sacramento, California, where she or her foot had settled after leaving Rocky Ford about 1950. She was born here in Rocky. She was Martha Lewis, and I gone to California, although we had known each other for some years. Not there. We're married there in Sacramento.
Do you remember where your folks bought their groceries when they were here?
that summer. Quite well. See, we came to Rocky, the neighborhood of Rocky Ford. I came with it in 1919 when W.F. Green, grandfather, Papa, we call him, bought the interest. Leonard Wise partnered 3 yard coal pits. His wife, Ida, had died sometime a couple of years before that, and he was looking for a new partner. Told my father we lived, as a result, in his home on South 10th Street, so we're South 10th, which is just leading up to the fact that we bought the Stauffer's General Store was very handy, just within a block. But I can remember other stores, particularly Pap Shell's shop, meat shop.
Were they farther away from your house?
Yes, it was farther. I remember it would have been about in that bank, in that block with the Russian Ford Mexican Bank now. Somewhere right there. There were several grocery stores. I also, right across the alley from us in the best hotel was somebody's bakery. Made some, and I often buy the goodie of some sort there, particularly jelly rolls. Jelly.
Where was the Starburst?
That in the location where at that time where his store was there in that 300 block. I had never knew it before. It was in that location.
Did they have charge accounts then?
Yes, they did. There for nearly everyone.
No credit cards.
No credit cards, no.
Do you remember your first telephone?
I remember the first, I'll put it differently, the first one that sticks in my memory is out at Babcock Farm on Patterson Valley Road, 2 miles west, where they spend time during the summers, home during years. Sometimes they move years by.
Was that your grandpa's?
Yes. To about, until the time I was in school, and sometimes in the summer after that. But again, leading up to the telephone is that it was one of the square boxes on the wall, and being a rural line, you had to ring the gong to attract the attention of the operator in town.
Did it have a crank?
Yes, a crank.
What did your family do at family gathering?
Well, they're at the Babcock farm. They were usually in the summer. Naturally, we have pictures of everybody out in the trees in front of the house. Hammocks and phonographs and taking pictures, and fellas with pictures who wore shoes, and during a lot of talking, of course, and a lot be talks. German and marvelous cook, and like to have family gatherings there. At one time there, from that hill where their farm was, one Sunday afternoon, must have been about 1914, when we watched them there, the first airplane fly from the fairgrounds here in Rocky Ford. We could see it out there that far.
Wonder who was flying it.
I wouldn't know that. I would know that. A barnstormer, of course. Family gatherings at the Greens home that were generally well, the ones that I can remember would have been at Christmas time, when which we usually spent there. The women making candy, including dipping chocolates, is in my mind memory so well. The big Christmas tree with lighted candles, things of that sort, and of course family dinners like most people all that.
What else did you do for entertainment? Were there dances, of course? And
Yes. Well, let's set a time frame
good.
Later, possibly, Honor, when those times that I mentioned would have been when I was a small child, in 5, 6,
Oh,
up in that stage. I might add that as the times I remember at an older age, when my mother and father were living in Rocky Ford, they were quite social and often had many parties that I attended. And during that period, people had played cards. They roll up the rugs in the living room and dance to player piano or victrola, and have dinner parties, things of that sort. For we younger people, we were wondering just the other day how kids entertained themselves before television. The summer, it wasn't a bit difficult. We swam in the Catlin Ditch right at the place where we cross it to play golf now. We played on the old gravel pits there on the hill where it is now Play Park. We skated in the winter, played ball in the streets, even played ball down at the fairgrounds. We rambled around over town and country very much like kids do now when they're not watching television.
that's right.
Yes.
So you really didn't need television then.
No, we didn't.
Your family, of course, had electricity and water and all those things, can they?
Yes, they always.
That was all.
I can't remember when they didn't have in Rocky Ford.
That's what I meant in Rocky Ford.
Out on the farm, have electricity until later.
Mm-hmm. What did they do? Did they have? How did they?
There, coal oil lamps and lanterns and wood stove, wood and coal stove. Of course, we my grandparents here in town had wood and coal stoves. I guess we did in the hut. I don't remember as much about our living down there as really as I do the times in Rocky Ford.
You were pretty young in La Honda, though.
Yes, I was 10 when I left La Honda. I can remember a gas stove in La Honda, and later one here in Rocky Ford after we moved to Rocky Ford, and incidentally, at that time here in this area, we had synthetic fuels. They was a coal gas plant, coal burning gas plant in La Junta, and gas was piped to Rocky Ford. That was not used for heating by anyone that I know of, but they started the use of gas stoves, cook stoves. Synthetic fuel.
What did they use the synthetic fuel for? Or gas stoves?
Gas stoves, yes.
Was it quite expensive?
Must have been. I'm sure it would have been. Burning coal and in a might almost say, rather somewhat of a pilot plant for coal gasification, which is becoming such an interesting thing now in our
We think it's true now.
Yes. Yes.
What are some of your recollections of the Arkansas Valley Fair?
I think it would have been 1915, the first one. When I've been about, I was no more than 5 or 6 years old, I'm sure of that. I had to be carried from the entrance through the grounds to the grandstand because the mud was so deep, a young squirt could hardly make his way through it. One of those times that it really rained on our fair. Pop Green had always had a box in the fairgrounds, had always been a member of the association when it was operated by an association, and the events of the fair are rather fresh, including Leonard Stroud and Mamie with their marvelous riding and roping, his jumping horses, his beautiful horses, his jumping pair that he would ride Roman standing and jump over an automobile. Also, we had some pretty rough characters. Our horsemen in those days, the Bests, the McIntoshes, I don't know who else it would be, but quite often a race, especially the relay race, would end in a fight right before the grandstand, which added a lot to the show. One of the most interesting ones was the year Watermelon Day of 1929. Rather stormy day, a little cold and stormy, and no fair had been planned for that year. But on that Thursday morning, dear Miss Belle Daring decided there was going to be observed, and got a few of the cow people to bring in some horses for some amateur races, and rounded up a few truckloads of watermelons, and there was a watermelon day that has made it continuous in time and started just by her efforts. Hers and probably a few other people.
Belle Daring was the daughter of George Swink,
She was the youngest daughter, youngest child in the Swink family.
Well, that was quite an exciting time. Do you remember the Depression?
Very well. Graduated from the University of Illinois in February of 1930, after the crash of October 1929. And went to California to make my fortune as some kind of a financier, and found out there was a very poor market for financiers, for budding financiers in there or anywhere else, and managed to get a job in a finance company as a clerk at $80 a month, which wasn't bad. When it got up to 120, Martha and I were married, and by the time that Susan was born in 1933, I was making $144 a month, and none of the fortunate people. That's uh, uh, another incident in that President Roosevelt was inaugurated on March 4th, 1933. On the 6th, he closed the banks, and on the 6th of March, Susan was born. I may have had $6 or $7 in my pocket, and that would have been about the limit of it. And but that was everybody was in that same boat, and we managed to get along. Everyone at the remembers that the doctor and attendants during that time she was being delivered with Susan were all very concerned about what the hell they were going to do for the next meal, because they were all in the same boat of only what pocket change they have in their pockets. But banks had closed, and it was a very long time. But again, we all lived through it somehow.
Well, that's true. How did you feel about WPA then? Or did you think?
It was. We moved, Martha and I moved our family, just my daughter Susan, back to Rocky Ford in 1935. Arrived here on her birthday, January 26th of 1935, in the midst of not only depression and WPA and those problems, but also in the worst of the Dust Bowl days. It was a question whether I was going to keep him here, or it got so bad during that spring. WPA was put into operation in Rocky Ford very shortly after that. The principal activity, two of them that I remember. One was a program of providing WPA labor to build sidewalks and curb and gutter for people who did not have it, if they would provide the materials, cement and gravel. The crew was headed by Mr. Lyons, and I can't think his first name.
Wasn't Franklin?
No. Yes, it was Frank Lyons. I believe it was. Had 4 materials, but the city had no means of conveying them from job to job, and so George Babcock gave the city an old Model T Ford truck that they had there at the coal and lumber yard to give them transportation for their materials. The other project here was the building of privies for the people in the country. Again, a crew would build the base foundations and would haul them out to the person's farm, and very well designed, much different, much better than the much more sanitary than the old ones, would even dig the pits and would build a structure for the property owner, provided as long as he would provide the materials. And a note about that, Irvin Haynes, one of the staunch Republicans and one of the fine old people here, gave his nephew Gene an awful bad time about taking advantage of that. Irvin didn't believe on this getting things for free from the government.
Well, Gene was was a Republican too, wasn't he?
Yes.
But he,
Well, they all were.
but he took it then.
Gene's the older Gene had died.
Uh-huh.
But Irvin was kind of looking after Tom.
Did you serve in the World War I or two, or World War II?
No, Elmer.
No, not. Look, you were.
I had that come up the other day, and I had to tell him it was World War II. Yes, I was finally drafted in 1934. I had some military training, of course, from military school at Roswell, New Mexico, and also from the ROTC and at the university, but had allowed the commission to lapse over those years. And also having a new baby boy in 1943, I didn't feel like getting into it anyway, other than if they needed me bad enough to come and get me, which they did in March of 1944. And I thought I was going to the Navy at the induction center, but a young Marine sergeant came into the room where there was a group of us and said, "Now, two of you are going to the Marine Corps. I hope it's a couple of big, husky young guys, but they're going to be volunteers. The Marines will not have anybody but volunteers, of course, to preserve their tradition." And Elsie Richard from Fowler, about my age. Finally, no one else seemed interested in us, so we decided we'd try the Marine Corps, and did, and went through training. And in December of 1944, shipped out for the South Pacific, and took part in the landing at Okinawa on Easter Sunday, April 1st, April Fool Day of 1945. Some of the little ditties that were going around were, let's see, you in your Easter bonnet with camouflage upon it, and things of that sort. Went through the campaign there in a supply unit, which was never any big thing, and other than that we did move a hell of a lot of batteries and radios. That was our job, signal supply. And they always seemed every week or 10 days they wanted us closer to the fighting troops, and so we would move all the stores and set up a new camp, and then move them again and move them again. The most interesting part of the time out there was after after Hiroshima, and the Japanese folded up. First Marine Division was sent into North China, to Tientsin and Peking, various places there, and I had about 7 or 8 weeks there in Tientsin, and at a very interesting time, in that our mission was to supervise and be on to make sure that the Japanese forces were there. We got we're out of the way without any hopefully without any trouble, which happened.
In your business, were you connected with agriculture in any way?
Very closely, of course. Anyone in Rocky Ford in business is connected with it. We bought and sold grain. The business was coal, feed, lumber, and building supplies. At that time, we bought and sold grain from farmers. Our closest, the biggest connection was in supplying the box shooks for shipping cantaloupes.
What is shook, Bob?
Shook is the pieces that hook up to make the crates, and they are produced in just the right sizes, bundled by ends, slats, bottoms, and such.
They were wood.
Yeah. Oh yes, wood. And it was a big thing in Green and Babcock's because there were at that time all melons were shipped out in these wood crates, and we had to have them on hand to before the beginning of the season, and have them coming in regularly. It was shipped in by rail, freight cars, mostly from the northwest forests. The one year, we handled the yard handled 60 cars of those in about 60 days. You can see that it was a busy time.
Oh, yeah.
It was around the clock, 7 days a week, when people needed crates to finish up a car or for whatever purpose. They didn't mind calling at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. We'd go down and load up what they wanted. And
did you deliver it, or did they?
Yes, we're prepared to, and worked both ways. Some the farmers. In the beginning, up until about 1938 or 39, most melons were packed on the farm. Farmer would buy his crates, and he or his family would make up the crates, pack the melons in them, and put the lids on and haul them in. About that time, about 1938 or 39, they started the packing sheds where the melons were hauled in bulk and were packed on the shed.
Up until then, the family had done it.
Well, they were done on the farm, on the farms, not necessarily families. The fruit tramps, anyone who had enough of an acreage would have to have professional help, and it was quite a profession, the nailing those crates and the lidding particularly, and the packing them so that they would be the right number of melons according to the size in each crate, and that they would be put in there to the best advantage.
The packing would be quite a trip.
Oh, that was the highest paid job, the packer. Got those melons.
So they sort of graded them as they.
Yes.
Who were some of the early farmers that you worked with?
Oh, all of practically everyone, because practically everyone at that time raised melons. There
were more melons raised then.
Yes. There were as many as 3,000 cars of cantaloupe shipped out of this area, which included Ordway, and from Manzanola to Los Animas. I think there were about 5 loading sheds here in Rocky Ford alone. Others at Fayette, Swink. There were 3 in Swink, as I remember. I worked on one of the sheds one summer when it was still field pack, and they were be brought in mostly by wagon still at that time.
from the
Speaking of some of the people, Everett Marshall was one of those who hauled mills in for us. They would be stacked on the platform and then had to be trucked by hand trucks into the cars to be loaded and braced out so that they would travel, most of them going to the east as far as New York, Philadelphia, and so on. Everett was at that time a big burly kid. You could see he had the makings of the rest that he became. The Japanese were great melon farmers. On that particular watermelon day, they were going to pick cantaloupes no matter what, so we had to work watermelon day. And the shed boss made it plain to those Japanese boys that if we were going to have to work to get their melons out, they were going to have to bring in a supply of sake to keep it going, which they did. Among them are the Hirakatas, the Nakayamas, of course. And, Harada, that was the big farmer, Mr. Nomura. And then, as I say, nearly everyone was in the melon business, and we dealt with nearly all the farmers around, as well as hauling crates to the Manzanola, hauling crates to Ordway, to Swink. On our little old Model T Ford trucks, you could haul about 1,000 crates.
I was going to say, how many could you?
About 1,000. They were flat crates, and they let me haul about 1,000 at a time. I also had that job of for several summers of driving one of those trucks and delivering crates.
Wonder why they're so that our we don't have as many melons now. I wonder why.
Well, at that time they weren't. In the beginning, and that is not Genesis. This is beginning of things around here. Senator Swink experimented with so many crops and found that melons did very well, both watermelons and cantaloupes. The first shipping of melons, according to Pop Green, who was connected with it from way back, would have been to the mining camps, Leadville and Cripple Creek, and was done in barrels. And watermelon was the thing that people knew about. Not too many people knew about cantaloupes. Watermelons would be packed in barrels, and the interstices between the larger watermelons would be filled with cantaloupes, and that was the beginning of shipping of melons. And that was probably the beginning of it anywhere in the country. Until long into the 1920s, they were very few grown anywhere else. Then they started bringing them with the longer seasons, earlier seasons in Imperial Valley and in Phoenix. Principally through the professionalism of so many of our Rocky Ford boys who had had the experience here, knew how to do the jobs, and that's the beginning of the fruit tramps, as we knew them in the melon business.
When it started, then the melons were actually just like we use a foam to brace the watermelons, weren't they?
Yes. That's what they were used in
material.
In those barrels. That's how it was done. Then the growing here became less profitable as it was as they learned to do in these other places, and as they had earlier seasons, longer seasons, and it was much more profitable. And that's about the time when they stopped growing very many for shipping. Of course, they've always grown for seed here. And I think I don't know how it compares in acreage, but ours has grown considerably in the last 6 or 8 years here, with the large population close enough that we could deliver to them in by truck.
By truck.
Yes.
Wonder how long it took the melons to get to the.
Oh, it took
market.
4 or 5 days, and they weren't fit to eat when they got there. But people just didn't know that.
They didn't know it would melt.
They didn't know they were not fit to eat. But I've heard of the condition they would be in, soft, and because they were packed green here in order to carry that far, and those early melons were not of the quality that were later developed by the seed breeders. They a lot of different kinds, and they didn't have well, I think they had good eating quality here, but the breeders who developed those would carry better for a period of time. Could be picked a little closer to ripe and would carry. That's what is done now.
Who were some of the early ranchers here?
Well, there were the Bests, of course, and Potters, the earliest people here, something Mary were the earliest, and me think, of course, the Beatties in Manzanola. Swinks, they had ranches. Dr. Fenton, old Dr. Fenton, was a rancher as well as a doctor.
He was?
Oh, yes, he was land developer, and oh, yes.
Do you remember what his first name was, or his? It wasn't Ward too, but anyway.
I don't know. I sure.
But anyway, Dr. Betty.
The old Dr. Fenton, yes. Right off, they don't come to mind.
Were the farm labor wages low, or did you know it?
Well, it would be very low by present.
I mean, by
present standards. Vary, of course. I really don't know too much about it, but I would imagine that $20 to $30 a month with keep, board and room on the grandfather's farm, Grandfather Babcock's farm. He always had a couple of young men, as well as his son Lauren, there, and they lived just part of the family, and I imagine $20 to $30. Another thing that they had up there was very interesting. Grandmother Babcock had been was German, Pennsylvania Dutch, spoke language, and they went on the farm. They built a small labor house up on the hill, where each year for 2 or 3 years, this being the time that the Germans were coming here from Russia, German families, grandfather and grandmother would recruit a family, give them a place to live, give them employment as they were needed on the farm, and she would teach them language and custom and culture of the country. And 2 families still here. The Bitter family, old Henry and Mama Bitter, were with them for a year, and one of the Meyer families also. I think grandfather paid them when he had work for them.
Surely.
Piecework, and of course he would have some in the sugar beets.
Because there were quite a few sugar beets sent.
Yeah, sugar beets, I guess they were a big crop. Sugar beets and melons and hay and grain. Those were about.
Our factory was operating.
Yes, it built in 1900.
You attended school here for a while, didn't you?
Yes, came here in the 4th grade. Went to Washington School with Miss Partner there, Letty Partner, who ran a tight ship, believe me. Anyone will tell you.
She did.
Although my friend Dr. Charles Singleton says he knows for sure she did not have a paddling machine. She had just a strap that she used. And been through junior high and through until the junior year of high school in the old high school era on the north side, where Jim Wilson was the principal, and R.J. Walters, Rollins' father, was superintendent of schools and was running a fine school system. He had very, very good instruction and quite, as I look back, quite very well run.
Is there any teacher that you particularly remember?
Teacher?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mabel Baxter, not Mabel, Gladys Baxter. And Fern Bacon wasn't teaching. I think she was going to school for this time. And Miss Elliott was our Latin teacher. Mr. Childress was history. And the two Campbell sisters, Sadie and were good teachers. Learned them very well.
Mr. Childers was a little strict too, wasn't he?
They were all pretty strict.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have much in the way of discipline problems, all other than pranks, of course.
There were the 3 elementary schools then, weren't there?
Yes, there were 3 elementary, and the junior high was in the high school building. The 7th and 8th grades in the high school building. Harry Shade was our coach and the scoutmaster. And Leisure, Coach Leisure, and later went to Fort Collins, was coach while I was in there in the high school building.
Then we had a band too, didn't we?
Yes. The first band, which I finally became the first clarinet player during the second year, was organized by Ronald Waters, a fine musician and very aspiring young man who organized it I think it would have been in 1922. They even bought white uniforms for us. And I would have been about 24 musicians, unquote. There are still pictures of that band around. Harvey Gould has.
Was he in the band?
Oh, yes, Harvey was in the band. Roy France and Arnie Eichenbaum, the fall. It was about 24 people.
Did you have a band parents organization?
No,
raise money?
no. It was just the kids and Ronald Walters.
How did they support the band? I mean,
the district.
the district supported.
District supporting.
Did you play in the town band too? There?
Yes, of course, the concerts. Some of the time were in the library park right across from our home on 10th Street, and I played in it during summers. Another summer they were held in the railroad park, but forever. Also played in the orchestra at the Grand Theater.
Oh, you did?
Off and on, yes.
Now that orchestra, was that for musical shows or was it for movies?
This was in the time before the talking movies and background music.
The mood music.
Mood music, yes. For the Chic.
Uh-huh. Do you remember who was the conductor of that town band? Was it Guest and Dobbins?
Yes, he was. He was the conductor always.
Oh, that's what I couldn't remember any other. What is your earliest memory of Rocky Ford?
One of them would be their winter. They're in the house on 10th Street, watching sunrise the other side of the library park and black trees. I'm not much of one, I guess, to have a lot of memories. Some others that I've spoken of around the house and out on the farm. Oh, riding into town from the farm with grandparents in the buggy to deliver their butter and eggs around and pick up their supplies for the week. Playing around the lumber yard as a little kid is of that sort.
Where did you get your medical care?
Right here in town, they had the early as I can remember, Lott's Hospital was here. Dr. Pollock had the hospital. And we had fine doctors. There's Dr. Wolf, Dr. Kellogg, an osteopath, but still rather jet practice. And the Fentons, and Dr. Roberts, a dentist, and also, I'll try to think of it. And Dr. Lovejoy, who is one of the characters, wore a frock coat and top hat and drove an electric automobile. Dr. Fenton always had, the old Dr. Fenton always traveled by buggy, of course. When Martin and I lived on South 8th Street, or right across the street from Dr. B.B. Blott's, any time of the night we would were apt to hear him back his car out of the garage and take off for anywhere in the country that somebody called him. You could always hear him because he believed there's only one way to start a car, was with the throttle on the floor and slide the tires and such.
He drove in second quite a lot, too.
Yes.
Well, then he made house calls.
Oh, yeah, they all made.
Oh, they all made house
They all
calls.
made house calls. It's tremendous. I don't just stop it.
What city officials do you remember
Well, I've
before you were mayor?
I've known from back the early 1920s. I think I've known all of the mayors, most of the councilmen, including about the earliest from I can remember was either Sam Kitch or O.G. Ducate. And Mr. Farrell, of course, George Babcock was mayor for 6 years, no council, total 10 years. And Pop Summers, practically the entire office force and fire chief. And Paul Strauss, who was city engineer at the time that big improvements were made in the early 20s from the water plant and the water distribution system was installed. And when and he was still engineer when we moved back here from California in 1935 during the WPA days. He was followed by a young man from Lahada, Ireland, is his name, who lasted only a year, and Harry Barnes was then employed. It must have been about 1938 that Harry became city.
Until then, wasn't it?
Yes, it was dirt with the old pictures, the trees all along the way. That's one of the finest jobs painting anywhere in the country. They're pretty, other than just a little top coat. Oh, on all those years, that's 60.
I was going to say, it's been about 6 years,
And I can remember watching it. They did it right. They after grading, they laid a layer of large rock, then smaller rock, and then the bitumen was put on top of that, and it was all rolled by a big steam roller.
It's amazing because of the newer paving has had to be replaced so often.
Not even concrete, but it illustrates the how the secret of good roads is got to have very fine base.
And that was it, the base that did that.
Of course, it went through a lot of years without a lot of part wear too.
Yes, that's true too. Wondered about how much that cost.
I don't know, but it was nearly broke. That and the water plant that you built at the same time is about broke our city. And all the time that it threw it. And it caused people there from on the lower hand down by the ferryman.
Oh, those
Who's there? That's just
Oh, they had to pay.
Well, I just noticed something here. I want to tell you about the getting back to the melon deal.
Oh, yes.
Was we had two telegraph stations in town, right across the street from each other.
Oh, the postal and
The Western Union, and had two seats before school started. Gary telegrams for Western Union, which was interesting. And they were because the produce people did all their business by wire at that time. They would have a telegram normal width at double or triple length sometimes to get all
their orders.
Information about the markets. Also, a little introduction to the survey melon or the produce operators.
Oh, yeah. Well, there have been some other changes on Main Street. You see, we had this Red Cross pharmacy there for a while.
Yes, and of course, Hank Sherman's confectionery and the Funk confectionery. And
Now, the Funk confectionery, is that where Love Shoe?
yes, and Price and Price Dry Goods store. The bar across the street from Funk's, where carousel parking lot now, where I'll bet it. I guess this was a pretty active place before Vision in Colorado.
Then we had a laundry too.
Yes, laundry. And oh wait, and barbershop on South of me.
Oh, Tucker's? No, that was No, they were where Gobin is.
Bev and Bev Guyverson and Bev and well,
I remember Bev Guyverson, yeah.
Bev that rebuilding of the Grand Theaters fire that happened. Of course. Burned in 1934, and Joe Gusti put together a deal to rebuild it in 1935, which was probably the thing for those times. Mr. Todd had Joe Todd had
Mm-hmm.
Joe sold him the land, and Joe Todd sold the land, and Dad took a second mortgage to supply all the material for it, and Boosty managed to raise enough money to buy the labor and rebuild in 1935.
That took a little faith in the community.
About several years to get worked out, but it didn't work out.
Do you remember industries that we don't have anymore?
Yeah. Of course, there's Johnson Gilroy's flour mill.
Oh, yes.
There was a cement block plant that Jack Lawson had over on 12th Street, I think. Out of the canning factory, where I put in one season during panic canning red beets. Got enough for canning factory. They
Got enough for red beets. Huh?
enough for red beets and never cared for it since. And
That was a Libby factory, wasn't it?
What?
Wasn't that Libby?
Yes. And of course, you mentioned the broom factory. That was Paul Colton and his father. There were the Rockport Apple Parts. And Paul, they brings back another thing. Resurrected a day book from Stupid Greens, which was the lumberyard before it was Wise Greens. This would have been about 1907, I think. And on the first page of it is a sale of 6 sacks of plaster to Paul Colton.
To start his factory, uh-huh.
On the next page was a delivery of some nut coal to Martha's father for the kitchen rakes.
Oh.
Someday, if they right place to take care of things, that's her. That sort of go in. And also, we had Sinfuels at the back of those early days.
You mean like gasohol?
No, gas from coal.
Oh.
The plant was in La Junta, where on 5th Street and the Ghost Creek, where every Marshall built his big building, which now the city of La Junta has for shops.
Oh, yeah.
They had a plant there that burned coal, and it was piped into Rutherford.
I didn't know.
Sometime, I don't swear that. I don't think it was ever very well accepted with coal business.
Oh, no. No.
We didn't believe on it at all.
No, that's true, too.
And
Because you did tell
it is
coal.
kind of interesting.
Uh-huh.
It just came to me when I was reading that. Well,
What city officials do you particularly remember? The policeman or the fireman? Or...
Well, I try to stay away from police.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Joe Chenault. Before that, I remember.
Probably Joe Chenault was your first.
I remember Hooky Bowl.
Uh-huh.
I think his name. Stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that. Mem. Speaker. You. Victor.
Talk about great. I'd be there for
Oh, yes.
You may have a silence to it. To get the. Fix. Stop. Arrest. Patty.
Maybe you can think of the name of that doctor that described it for us.
Of course, when we finish, Dr. Lovejoy.
Dr. Lovejoy.
Yes.
That's the doctor. He will always wore what? Drove a funny little car, didn't he?
Electric for abortion. Dorner House.
Wasn't Ashball. No. Dr. Lovejoy, he drove that
An electric.
an electric car.
Electric car.
And always wore a top hat, didn't he? Did he wear a frock coat too?
Oh, yes, he wore a frock.
Oh.
I can't think of anyone.
Yeah.